All right, let's see. Oh, it says private? Huh. Does this work? I wonder. So, today I'm interviewing someone super interesting. Her name is, let's see. Oh, that's weird. I can see my, oh, gotta turn off the volume. So I'm interviewing Venus O'Hara, who has a podcast called Orgasmic Lifestyle. So super excited for you to all meet her today. She's Yeah, she has a ton of like a huge social media following, and a lot of her stuff has a ton of views. So I'm gonna dig a little bit deeper into being a content creator and all of that good stuff. And I haven't done a lot of these, so let me just make sure the YouTube live worked. If you could see it. Okay, cool. So you can see it. Perfect. So yeah, she's going to be joining us in 1 minute. Um, and then I'm trying to see if I can change the thumb. I guess we can take a picture on the, but yeah, she has 5.7 thousand followers on Facebook and 134,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is amazing with millions and millions of views. Some of her videos gets like millions of views, and then 20,000 followers on Instagram. So that'll be interesting to dig a little bit deeper into social media. Like how do you recommend like building out your social media following in today's age and what has changed? So looking forward to that. Yeah. So just to give you a little bit of background, she's known for being a sex positive activist, a model, a writer, and you can see she has like some pretty engaging content. So it's like self-development, um, and she's like redefining sensuality and living life on your own terms. So during the interview, I'm probably going to dig a little bit deeper into her background, how she even got into that world, like what happened exactly, and then some of the different pivots and some of the interesting projects that she's working on as well. And what advice would you give to someone who is looking to like explore more of their sexuality and um, yeah, should be interesting. I've actually never interviewed anyone like her on my podcast. Most of mine, as you guys know, is more like sales related, some self-development, coaching related things, but this is certainly a different topic. So should be interesting. Let me just send the link, a reminder, just so that she has it via email. So I'm gonna go ahead and send her a quick email. Oh, cool. So I can look, so I can actually, she has a on her website like the timeline. So this is interesting. So I'll read the timeline. So in 2020, so three years ago, she started the podcast, and she was interviewing experts in the field of nutrition, personal development, spirituality, and created a meditation app. Oh, there she is. All right, let's do this. Hey, hey Venus, how are you?
Hey, sorry, I think I clicked on the wrong link.
Oh,
So we
no.
had a couple of links.
Oh no, sorry about that.
Oh yeah.
At least we figured it out. So awesome. And I want to make sure, are you still good until the top of the hour? Do you have a hard stop at that time or?
Oh no, Friday vibes.
Oh,
So
okay, cool. So if it does, because you're such an interesting person that I would love to like ask
okay, oh
you. I have
thank
so
you.
many questions. I have so many
Oh,
questions. And okay, so this is currently live streaming on YouTube. I hope that's okay.
oh yeah, okay,
Okay.
fine.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's get right into it then, because I want to maximize as much time with you as possible.
Amazing.
Hey everyone, I'm super excited for this for you to all meet Venus O'Hara, who I feel like you're probably I would say I'm used to more interviewing like more typical executive coaches like and coming from corporate America. like selling more like learning and development leadership programs to corporations. Like I'm more like that's more of like the my realm of expertise. So what you do is definitely a lot different. So I guess like how would you describe like the way I look at it, it's like empowerment, reach like so there's like a holistic wellness, like loving yourself, like a self-love angle, but everyone's always fascinated about like sexuality and exploring different boundaries and things like that. So how did you get started in this work? Like I don't know too many people in this world. So
Well, it's very niche for sure, but it's something that affects everyone. That's why it can be so interesting. But it's a very long story. I actually wrote a book about it, but it's interesting because I didn't have any kind of like precise path for my life after I left university. I just came to Spain to kind of learn Spanish and ended up staying
mm,
more years than I anticipated because the idea was always to go to London and get a real job. But
mm,
I got a job in a export department of a printer, an offset printer, and I'm not very technical. And I had to, start the export department from zero. So I was targeting publishers in London and Paris. And I just printed out a directory of publishers, and out of the page jumps erotic fetish. And I was like, ooh, this is interesting. So
huh,
I actually went and had an interesting meeting with some publishers in London. And what really struck me about these people was that we were having board meetings talking about paper grammage and types
mm,
of binding while mentioning words like very explicit titles of books. And I just loved the matter of factness of it because I was brought
yeah.
up in very different environments. So I just loved how
Mm,
natural it was. And then I began to print some of their books. My top shelf at the back has got all of their books. And that became
mm,
so it was I was just I started this whole personal exploration of this world. And I started being a fetish model at the time as well, because I really enjoyed kind of being my own art director and using myself as an art object, so to speak.
mm.
And then I kind of gathered lots of my own material, and then I went from printing to real estate at the worst time, 2007, 2009.
Oh
So I was on a
yeah.
commission only basis. I was in luxury real estate, but with an empty fridge. So I lived this real contrast in my life. And at that point, I
Mm,
had a F it moment and just thought, you know what, I don't care what anyone thinks, I'm going to
mm.
start a sex blog because I just
Wow.
lost my fear at that point. Because, I think it's a very fearful thing when you think about how personal that can be. But it just felt like the
Yeah.
right thing because there was nothing else for me. Because I sold two apartments, took the money, I thought, I'm done with working for other people. So
Mm,
it was kind of that sensation because I was never entrepreneurial. I never had that spirit, but I
yeah.
always so I was pushed to a place where that was the only option. If you see what I
Mm.
mean. Mm.
Yeah, well, so all right, so I forgot to provide a little bit more context. So let me
Mhm.
just yeah, so it sounds like your background is you're a sex positive activist, you're a model, a writer, a podcaster, YouTuber, a designer, a lot of different things. Um, but as someone who's a content creator myself, like it's hard to ignore like you have a pretty massive following. Over close to 6,000 followers on Facebook, 134,000 subscribers on YouTube, over 20,000 followers on Instagram, and also on LinkedIn. So, that in itself feels like a full-time job. Like, how do you think about like prioritizing and where you allocate your energy when it comes to creating content?
Well, I kind of go with the biorhythms a lot of the time. So if I'm feeling like being seen, I'll make a
Mm,
video. But if I just don't, I just want to not be seen, which is kind of a lot of the time, I'll just make a podcast because I'm just speaking to the wall. Or I might be
mm,
do my writing projects. I'm fortunate in the sense that I don't have any pressing deadlines, so I can kind of pick and choose
mm,
what I do according to how I'm feeling. But it's a constant. It wasn't natural this decision to make videos or even the
mm.
podcast. It was always other people suggesting it to me, and I thought, okay. Even being a
Ah,
writer wasn't natural because I had to start writing about the photos I had just for SEO, and then I became like then the writing kind of came from that. So it's very interesting. It's
huh,
when I think of people who have, let's say, business plans and all these
uh,
precise plans. I mean, had none of that. Everything was
yeah,
really organic. Took me to another thing. I never
huh,
thought of being a vlogger. It was actually my clients who wanted me to make video reviews of products. So it was always
okay,
someone else suggesting what I should do next. So,
huh.
and I was open to it.
Mm, I'm curious, what is your MBTI, the Myers-Briggs type assessor?
Oh, what
Do you
is it? What
remember?
is it? I think I've got a tab open. I think I should know it. I should know. I think it's. I should find it in an email
Okay.
because I'm sure I've got it here somewhere.
It- Well, the reason why I'm asking is because I'm also very like intuitive based. So if I feel like, okay, today I feel like making a video or live streaming or whatever it is, right? I tend to do it. Whereas I think most of society wants to be like more structured and strategy and like, oh, I gotta have this like 10-year business plan and like map out like all these metrics. Like I'm definitely not that person. So when you said that, that certainly resonated with me where like some days I'll just be inspired. I'm like, I'm gonna bang out a book, you know? And then, but I think the world just doesn't, most people don't think that way. So it's refreshing to hear that you similarly, it's like, hey, if you feel called to something, like you just do it.
Yeah, I mean, so the best thing about my life and is actually that I have no alarm for 15 years. So I've always had that feeling of should I get up earlier and live a more disciplined life? But at the
Yeah.
end of the day, I think what's really important for writing or any types of content creation is that you need to be well rested. I find that my brain just
Mm,
doesn't work. And also, if you're
mm,
tired, your eyes can, you see the tired eye in the video. And I've had times
mm,
over the years where I've had burnout and you could really see this kind of, I'm just doing it just to get, payment, what have you, but it wasn't done with my heart. So I think
huh,
it's good for the creativity. I think, having a well-rested night is really important. So that's really important for
mm,
me, having
mm.
no alarm.
Yeah,
Mm.
I think most people that are in typical corporate, like they probably don't even know what that is like because I
Mm.
think most of society operates like very structured. And I think as a society, we kind of, this is so old, right? Like back then when we had to work in factories or the farming and stuff like that, obviously there was like, it was more labor intensive. So you had to put in the amount of hours. But today, where there's more creativity and knowledge, and, there's a lot of people that are upper class and above, right? Or more like using their brains. So,
Mm.
I think it is a little bit backwards how we have to wake up and check clock in, like work a 40
Mm.
hours. But in reality, like during those 40 hours, like we're just catching, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Blah, blah, blah. Like we're not actually like, so it's just interesting that you have this life that many people probably are not used to or can't even imagine, right? Just the way that society operates currently.
So people ask, people think that I'm going to be in bed all day or something, but I actually schedule all my meetings for the afternoon, so I have no rush. And if my morning time is spent reading, so I'm a passionate reader like you are. So
Mm,
because people don't find time to make, don't make time for reading a lot of the time. But for me, it's having my coffee in the morning, which is
mm,
very important to me to kind of just have that time just to read something. Because a lot of the times I'm reading books of people I'm going to interview, or it's all things that it's all content that I can actually apply to my life.
mm,
So it's kind of a work, really. It's kind of like learning, I guess.
mm.
Mhm.
It's almost like a trick, right? I feel like I think we talked about this on your podcast, but the being able to meet such interesting people from podcasting, I'm in my opinion like one of the secret hacks of life where it's just like, oh, I get to spend quality time, like really intimate time with this human being that it's like super intentional. And yeah, I just think it's such a privilege to be able to interact with like super interesting folks like yourself. And it's like, man, like I get to do this like all the time. Like what a gift, right?
Yeah, it's amazing, but it's also I find that my guests come to me organically, and it's all these topics that are
Mm.
coming to me are topics that I'm interested in as a content consumer. So
Huh.
it's double fun for me because I wanted to actually make the Orgasmic Lifestyle, a podcast, a kind of a lifestyle philosophy, let's say, because I was kind of getting bored in the sex world because I find that a lot of the time
Mm.
it doesn't reflect who I am. For example, this weekend in Barcelona, there's going to be a big sex toy fair. But if I look at the imaging or the kind of what people are trying to say and what I want to
Mm.
say, it's not always the same. Because I think in the
Huh.
sexuality world, there's the medical side or there's the very kind of explicit
Mm.
side. I don't feel like I'm either. And
Mm.
I think with the no alarm life that I have, I wanted to share more details about my lifestyle philosophy as content. So that's why I kind of came out of just sexuality and going into
Mm.
spirituality, personal development books
Mm.
and things like that. So for me, it's kind of like where my growth area, but I do feel like I have a
Mm.
lot to share. Because another thing I want to share soon on LinkedIn is actually how much effort I put into my making lunch. Because a lot of people, I remember years ago when
Huh.
I was working at the printer, There was a client from Holland who came to watch the print run, and when we went to have lunch, and he was horrified to see all the factory workers having a three-course meal and wine, because in Spain, the mealtime is it's very sacred still. But where he said, in my country, we just have a sandwich behind the desk as if that was something good. But I mean, I don't think we should be sacrificing our health for
Mm,
money or for our career. I think it's better to be in a kind of like physical flow, which I'm trying to do. I think
mm.
it's optimal, I think. Mm.
It's interesting because even though we come from vastly different worlds, like I can relate to a lot of what you're saying because I do think even in the business world, right, whether it's tech, which is where I've spent most of my time, it's very like there's more of like sensational headlines are typically like the ones that get all the media, but really it's when you're in tech, right? It's like less about. So yeah, it is interesting. Like and to your point, I'd also noticed that as well. Like I'm like, am I the only crazy person here? Like at LinkedIn, for instance, which is the number one company to work for in terms of I think we get like when I was working there was a million applicants and maybe about 1,000 people obtain jobs at LinkedIn, so very highly coveted. So, the upper
Mm.
echelons, like getting into Harvard or Oxford, right?
Mm.
And you get there and then it's like I take lunch because like they provide like very nutritious farm to table, paleo options, like, very intentional with the menu and everything. And literally most 90% of LinkedIn employees like go up to their desk and they eat their food while they're like taking meetings and stuff. And I'm like,
Mm.
am I the only one that's crazy here? Like, no, like that, like hour is sacred. Like that's like time for me to like treat myself, love myself, be super intentional. But it just seems like I'm like the crazy one. I'm like, why is all my teammates like just chowing down like they're, and I don't know. So to your point, like I noticed that as well. And that's one of the reasons why I got out of the corporate because I was seeing like on paper it was great. Like you get all this clout. Oh, I work at LinkedIn and I'm meeting successful like entrepreneurs and they would have people like Simon Sinek come speak to us and like, people of that
Oh.
caliber like almost every week. And I was like, it was such a privilege, but I just saw like everyone was on the hamster wheel and I'm like, And then, I was like, let me do something like more meaningful and like a little bit more intentional with my life, as opposed to just climb the corporate ladder just to make a couple $1 million. Like, what is it all for?
Yeah, definitely. But I think it's good to have experienced that because I know people who are, trying to be life coaches in their 20s and they haven't had that experience of what the real unconscious world is like. And I think it gives
Mm.
you a lot of insight, especially for the content you're making, because maybe the content you're making is for those people who want to escape that
Mm.
lifestyle as well.
Yeah, and it's tough, right? Because like I do meet with a lot of like, well, I'll have coffee chats with folks in more of that world, right? Like young, like you said, young 20-something-year-olds that are making really good, like, $500,000 a year, which is incredible, right? That to be like 24 to make that much. But I could see, and then like they're not happy, right? Or they're gaining a lot of
Mm.
weight, or they just like you can tell like their way of being is just like very like antsy. And then I'm like, hey, like, it doesn't seem like you're very happy with this. And then like, why are you still here? Why are you still working at Google or Amazon or
Mm.
Facebook or whatever, right? And they all like basically everyone always says the same thing. They're just like, oh, dude, like the whole golden handcuffs, like, I don't know, man. Like the money's pretty good. And then I'm
Mm.
like, well, what do you do with that money? They're like, well, I get to travel for like, 3, 4, 5 weeks sometimes. And I'm like, yeah, but you're only happy during those 3 to 5 weeks. Like, what about the other 300 and, like 20 days? They're like, yeah, that's a good point. And then they still like continue on that path. And I'm just like, all right.
I
I
think
don't know.
the
It's
trap
just,
is once you start getting, a family and a mortgage, then you're kind of like stuck
yeah.
in that world, I think. Because then you have
Yeah.
responsibilities and it's very hard to give up. And that's giving you some type of stability. So that's why people do like the side hustle and wait till that grows
Mm,
before they make a jump. But I had no, I mean, I was on commission. So at the time when there were
mm,
no sales, so for me it was like nothing to something. It's interesting
mm,
because what was interesting about my transition from that world was going from the sales world, which is with no commission or no salary, just going to everything's a gamble, like making visits, viewings Monday to Friday, but not making a single euro. Then
mm,
I just made sure that all my projects after that time were actually paid, actually project for
mm,
money. It's interesting how we kind of,
mm,
try and set up revenue like the sales model is kind of like if it hits, it's really good, but then
mm.
you spend a lot of time not making any money. I just, mm.
So I'm curious about that, right? Like, how did you always have faith, or was it more like you just like intuitively did you know you're adding value to the world? Like, because I know like you're definitely further along in the entrepreneurial journey, right? I'm relatively new to it, but sometimes I'm like, oh, this feels right, like intuitively, like I feel like I'm impacting more lives, but it's hard for me to like not look at the numbers and be like, man, like I'm an absolute failure compared to like when I was in corporate making like a lot of money, you know?
I think for me at the beginning, it's all about having a mission because I think I was reading a lot of because I was printing erotic books. I was reading a lot of erotic, let's say, memoirs in the mid 2000s, and I was just seeing that like what my message or my vision was not being reflected in media or in women's magazines
Mm,
because I think it was I wanted to kind of express a more transcendental experience of what intimacy is because that's how I've
mm,
experienced it. So I just felt that a lot of these books that were liberated was about women trying to act like men and be very promiscuous and say this is really cool or
mm,
whereas I think for me I'm more into the kind of like quality or the depth or the kind of connection and that was I
mm,
didn't see that around and but I was thinking it was a way more possible to relate to maybe because I think
mm,
people they like shocking stories or stories that are very different from how they live life because it's always like being a fly on the wall in someone else's life
mm,
but I just felt that my vision wasn't out there and
mm,
I was also very yeah, very passionate about that. And also the photos I was making, there's no Photoshop or no editing. So I was that was like a
mm,
body positive message as well. Because I think body
mm,
positivity, you get this kind of like in magazines, you're getting all this retouching, all these people who are very young starting with
mm.
Botox. And I remember there was a magazine in England that I was actually printing
Oh,
their advertising for. And I opened the page and I could see goosebumps on someone's thighs. Like, wow, this looks so good. It just felt nice to see, or compression
oh,
marks. And I thought this was really refreshing. So I wanted to create
mm,
something very much like that, kind of unfiltered, unedited photos. But I'm not like a very big person. I'm not very small. So because I think sometimes
mm.
body positivity is something like a celebration of unhealthiness, which I don't really kind of agree
Um,
with that kind of
huh.
angle. So it's kind of like just being a kind of more normal normal thing or
Yeah.
kind of in the middle, you know. Mm.
That's so refreshing. I mean,
Mm.
first of all, I want to acknowledge you for like innovating in a like did you said in a space that sometimes is like very sensationalized, right? And I think
Mm.
sometimes it is good to normalize things. So I do
Mm.
appreciate the authenticity, the vulnerability, and perhaps that's why you really touched a nerve, and that's why you have millions of engagements, right? Um, because I do think you're right. I do see, and it's even like I'm thinking for myself, I'm like, oh, you've inspired me to be a little bit more open about sharing about the because everyone else is talking about, oh, look at how awesome my office is and like all the perks, right? But no one ever
Mm.
talks about like the downsides of that really. So
Mm.
I think it's just more realistic where I can share both, right? It's like, hey guys, like this is what I really enjoyed about like big tech, and this is what some of the downsides are. And then I think it would just paint like a more realistic and accurate portrayal of like what really is going on. So you just inspired me to be more open about that. Yeah.
Yeah, what's really wonderful is when you just stop caring what people think. That's just a real and people talk about that a lot, but no one really, embodies what that means. And I think in
Yeah.
the LinkedIn that we talked about is look at me kind of thing. And I think after we spoke, I made a post called I got fired 3 times.
Oh yeah, it
Yeah.
got good engagement, I saw.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
still getting likes. And then I got some DMs from people who said, thank you, thank you. People who've been
Oh.
in these recruitment rounds and they get to round three, they think they've got it and then they get eliminated. So all these kind of feelings of having your destiny at someone else's hands is
Oh.
it's interesting. But I wanted to paint the picture of you know, all the disasters I've had in work. 'Cause I think like it could be perfect because I have all these stories of
Mm,
professional struggles before I became a blogger that
mm,
I have a lot of things to share, like, arriving at work and getting sacked or just trying to be maybe working too hard and sacrificing your personal life for a
mm,
job that no one really values when no one values you. I thought that was
mm.
interesting to share some. failures, but also
Mm,
with hope and a good lesson from it. Because that particular
mm,
post, I spoke about identity and how we attach identity to our jobs. Whereas I'm kind of on a spiritual journey, so I'm getting on board with the idea of unity consciousness, where just thinking of, that we are one. So that's kind of a strange idea.
mm. And it's I'm curious because intimacy could look like a lot of different ways, right? But it sounds like you're equally as conscious about your intimacy with like friends or people you interview on podcasts and right. So how do you look at the lens of intimacy in terms of like being intentional with your friendships slash like business partners or just people that you interact with outside of like I guess like the more sexual type of intimacy?
I think it's really interesting because when you are self-employed, you choose who you work with, and I think it's a lot of energy and also alignment because I interviewed someone very recently all about this unity consciousness stuff, and I realized
Mm,
that every book I'm reading, every collaboration I have, can't just be for the money or the knowledge. It has to be making me more me and my expressions. Because, for example, recently I was asked to do some narration of some erotic stories. And I clicked on the website and then I opened this website. And it's all this like erotic imagery that I don't really, it was just too much for me. I thought, no, I can't put my
uh,
name to this, you know?
oh,
So I think it's really good to have, is this me? Is this what I'm trying to say? Is this adding to what my message is? And that's now my new
huh,
criteria. It's not just about the money or where it could lead me. It's more about, is
mm,
it coherent? Because I know that when we say no to something, something else will come that's more aligned. I really
mm,
believe that. That's an abundant mindset, not thinking, oh, I need to
mm,
grab onto this.
mm. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was surprised that you said yes to me coming on as a guest because I do think I'm like probably different than your average guest. So I guess, but were you just like, oh, this is like something that I'm also interested in? Or I guess, what's your way of thinking like that's like, oh, yeah, this kind of makes sense. Like, I'm just curious, where do you draw that line?
For me, it's for example, I've got a lot of podcasts that recorded that I've not published yet. I have maybe 6 months of content, and I've got some other people who are
Wow.
kind of in the personal brand space,
Mm,
so or even kind of some coaching. Maybe sometimes it's a bit more spiritual, perhaps.
yeah.
But in general, I like to have contrast in ideas, and I'm open sometimes to things that I don't personally agree with. But for the most part, I want to have people who are kind of like amplifying my own personal message, even if it's a message that I'm not actually giving personally. You know what I mean? It's because the
Yeah.
orgasmic lifestyle is about reaching climax in all areas. And I just started using LinkedIn in the last year. So it's interesting when you
Mm,
talk about LinkedIn because I'm very much interested in the corporate side of my sector
mm,
and normalizing it and
mm,
professionalizing it almost to kind
mm.
of just people to see the business side of it because it's a huge business which is just only
Huh.
growing, it's been growing, 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 especially since
Huh.
the pandemic. Mhm.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? It is more taboo in
Mm.
corporate, but I guess anyone who's in corporate knows the reality of like what happens behind the scenes, right? There's romance, there's like be even to your point, like there's even intimacy with coworkers, right? Like there's you work husbands and work wives, and like sometimes I feel so close to my coworkers because we're spending so much time together that but that's not really something people often talk about, right? It's more like taboo, but it's like some of those work relationships, I would argue, is even more important than like my my family, my cousins, my aunts and uncles, just because just the sheer volume of time that I spend with them, and so that
Something I
it's
miss,
interesting.
to be honest. That's something I really
Yeah.
miss because I'm spending a lot of time alone, and I'm a member of a private members club with a co-working. But I find that for the real work, I'm better off at home, so I get
Mm,
distracted with the human contact that I also crave. But
mm,
it's a great experience to be in a co-working because you're sharing a space, but you're not sharing office politics. So
mm,
we don't know if someone's not made an effort in a teamwork project, or we just don't
mm.
have any of that
Huh.
between us. We're still kind of sharing space, and we're not rivals or in any way. So people come from very different worlds, different
Mm,
countries, very
yeah.
different. So that's a very enriching environment to be in. But I do this
Mm,
weekend there's going to be a pleasure product fair in Barcelona. So I've got all my clients from
mm,
all over the world coming, and And the wonderful thing is if fairs are so tiring, so I'm actually in my own city, so it's going to be
Um,
amazing. So it's a great opportunity because I think, online you can do a lot of things, but the face-to-face energy is
mm,
something that is very special, especially because I want to go
yeah.
and get some podcast sponsors. I want to kind of get into the sex tech consulting world, which is I've been doing for several years, which is really where the money is, which is just the, design development of products, software and hardware products.
Oh,
That's a very interesting because the user knowledge or the user experience in that field is very sought after because many of the
huh.
creators, they are male engineers. They don't really know what it's like from the female user because
Oh,
most
you're
of the products
right.
are free. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
So it's a big world, and there's a lot of areas to
Mm,
tap into that are kind of behind the scenes. They're not so
yeah.
public facing like, Instagram or LinkedIn.
Mm.
So I'm very interested in that side. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, you I completely agree. I do think in person is just so much better.
Mm.
To your point, like I do miss like I mean like the one thing I didn't expect about being an entrepreneur is just like I work in the WeWorks in like a lot of different countries and stuff when I'm traveling. And it's so cool to meet people like from all over the world. So I do enjoy that. But I do miss like the intimacy of like the office space
Mm.
where you're getting like very deep like and I didn't expect I would miss that. Like I guess I just took that for granted because I just thought that's just how it is. But it is different, right? Because even with the folks at the WeWorks, it's like you don't really interact with them in the same way, right? It's more just like hi, or
Mm.
sometimes like, you have like a quick 20-minute, 15-minute chat, but you're not spending like 30, 40, 50 hours with someone like in a normal and I do miss that intimacy and at like just the level of like just sometimes it's the suffering of like, man, like we're really grinding a lot, huh? It's like, yeah, man. And then, in the suffering, I guess you end up growing deeper bonds, it seems like. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a very long time since I've been in those circles. I've always just latched onto one or two people,
Uh,
like rather than, yeah, I don't haven't been experiencing that much teamwork, unfortunately. Not
mm,
since until I started doing product development, which is so interesting because I used to kind of make drawings and then have ideas from different products. And then a few weeks later, the engineer would send a drawing back to me. So it was really nice to see all these different professionals put their touch or their input at different levels and then get the real product in my hand, about a year
uh,
later. So it's a really nice, that's when I really appreciated teamwork because I used to think that teamwork meant competitors, but it's actually everyone's just giving what their expertise is. And I really do
mm.
enjoy that.
That's a pretty big mindset shift. Um, well, I'm curious, like, well, I guess I do think some people do operate better. Their zone of genius is more when they have deep work, right? I think Cal
Mm.
Newport is a big proponent of like nowadays because of all the distractions we have, like it's just hard to do like really intentional deep work. Um, was there like a specific moment where you're like, oh, actually, like if I let others in, like it can actually add to my creativity versus like um take away from it?
I think it's just because the tasks I was doing changed. But also it was interesting because I was at first I was making a lot of my content in Spanish because I live in Spain. And I became known in 10 years ago, I wrote a memoir, and on the press release it says, Venus O'Hara, the most influential sex blogger in Spain. And I was like,
Hmm.
wow. Well, they weren't my words, but my editor or someone in the marketing department had done that. And I was feeling like
Huh.
really, really like honored and stuff. And but then a lot of Spanish bloggers tried to copy my business model, and I felt so annoyed. So it was almost like
Uh,
we were competing for radio slots for, panels or even congresses or conferences and things like that.
huh.
So I felt very much because when you're at the top and you've got all these people who want to kind of like be inspired by you, it's not an easy place to be, even though that's the
Hmm.
goal for a lot of people. And then what
Hmm.
happened was I realized a lot of these people who were trying to who were maybe too influenced by my work
Hmm.
for my liking. I feel like that their expression wasn't the same as mine, so I didn't feel very flattered, even though I should have been. I didn't identify myself or see myself reflected in them. So, but what was
Hmm.
really good is that they kind of formed a kind of an alliance. They wanted me to come as this special guest to this kind of new conference that they were creating. But
Hmm.
I just didn't go, so I started not going to those type of events. Then I
Uh,
started making content in English, and that opened me up. They kind of pushed me out. So I look at it now as a
uh,
spiritual, energetic thing that thanks to them, these people trying to take my place, it pushed me into a whole new area of making content in English, which
Huh.
opened me up to the world and which opened me up to YouTube and
Oh,
all these different. And now I have like a local life. I'm pretty much anonymous because everything I'm doing is in English, and now and
oh,
all my reach is in the US mainly. So it's kind of nice to
huh.
have that feeling of living in a place like Barcelona and then but having a
Mm.
global reach. Yeah.
So it sounds like based on your what you're sharing with me is that you're more naturally introverted, right?
Probably, probably. Yeah. Actually, I do have
Yeah.
the I in the Myers-Briggs. I can't find the
Yeah.
thing, but I think it's is it ISF? I think it's got an FP in it.
Yeah. The
Oh,
F the FP makes sense because I'm an FP, so I was like everything you're saying
I
is
don't know.
totally FP vibes.
I'll have to find I do have it somewhere. I do
Yeah.
have it in one of my 80 tabs open.
No worries. Well,
Okay.
so that's an interesting point, right? So it sounds like you like the anonymous, like in your community, like do people,
Mm.
I mean, you're pretty big now. Like, do you go to a lot of places, or is it only in your like niche that people like really know you, or do you just walk around like, let's say London, and then like random people will go up to you? Is it
That's
that
happened to me
big now?
actually before. And I mean, even in Barcelona, it happened when I was more locally well known. I used to do
Huh.
local radio. I used to work, write for El País, which is the biggest newspaper in Spain. I wrote over 100 articles. I've been
Huh.
on the front of magazines. I was in the press constantly for 8 years. So
Huh.
it was interesting. And I used to have what the freaky thing was, people used to message me saying, "Oh, I saw you here. I saw you there." They hadn't said hello to me. And I was like, oh my God. Because it
Huh.
felt like sometimes when I walked out, I do feel very, that's why I've never done dating apps. Because I thought when the dating app world started, I was like, I can't have my public image and say, oh, let
Um,
500 meters away. It's just too freaky.
uh,
But now I kind of like the anonymity. I do like it, to be
mm,
honest, because I think it's about, I never speak about my life in real time. It's all about things that I've learned, like reflections rather than
mm,
specific events or specific people, because I want to keep
mm,
that side quite private. But I just, for me, it's very easy to see where the line is. But I know that for people around me, it might not be so clear, or for
mm.
others from the outside.
So how do you not let that affect your ego, right? When you are getting more notoriety, like it sounds like you reached a point where you are becoming more of a public figure. Um, well, one, what is that like? Like, do you enjoy that? Or I guess with everything, there's pros and cons, right? Where is there any downside to that
Well,
life?
yeah, I think before I became spiritual in 2017. So there was a kind of before and after for me about that, because before that I was very much focused on female pleasure and maybe body positivity through fetish photography. And I think I was just thinking about, I thought my message was important and I wanted as much exposure as possible through my books or my publishers or what have you. And I felt like they weren't pushing my content as much as I needed to be pushed. So there's a bit of frustration on that side. It's kind of like, do you know who I am, diva style almost. But then since I became more spiritual, I just became a channel. I thought I don't have to kind of go against my own grain. I can just be a shy content creator and not do those videos of speaking to the camera because I don't feel comfortable. I'm
Hmm,
not going to do TikTok dancing videos. And I just thought about, what can I contribute today? I wasn't thinking about what can I earn today. It was more about
hmm,
what can I contribute. And once I made that shift, I've took myself out of the equation and just kind of became a channel for a message. Because I do believe that messages,
hmm,
we don't create our own ideas. I think they come to us. Like I think we are receptors to
hmm,
messages from the divine, and then we kind of create or express them through our
hmm,
however we can through our creation. But
hmm,
so that was a nice feeling for me because it meant like I can just do things in my own way because someone's going to relate to it. So
hmm,
I think everyone just needs to be authentic, really.
hmm. That's a really deep thought. Like, I would say that's probably the one area of life that I could be more intentional about, the spirituality aspects of things. And I mean, I definitely think there's moments like that I feel that like super connected, right? It's like even doing things like this, like I just love it. So it just feels very like intuitively, it just feels like right. But
Mm.
how do we, for folks like myself who want to tap into more of their spiritual channeling and divine spirit, whatever people want to call it, right? What practices and what activities would you recommend that will help us get closer to that channeled energy from the universe?
I think my first thing I've discovered was abdominal breathing. Because that's such a powerful thing, and I discovered it in a very stressful moment of my life. And when you learn about abdominal breathing. Like there's an amazing app called Belly Bio, and you put your phone on your belly and do this
Mm,
diaphragm breathing. And it shows you like a red light or a blue light when it's inhale, exhale. Then at the end,
mm,
it can tell you like how many breaths per minute and your level of chi. So it's kind of interesting to see because I remember I was
mm,
in a very stressful moment, and that's when I re reached my most relaxed state. And I was like, wow, I can actually choose to get stressed with my breathing because you
mm,
control your stress through how you breathe or how fast you're breathing per minute. So if you really
mm,
just like slow it down, you can be in control of that response. That's the first thing I actually learned in my spiritual journey. But I do think
mm,
spirituality is very much intertwined with personal development. They're not too far apart. Certain
mm.
books have spiritual undertones, just
Huh.
things about gratitude, meditation. These things
Mm,
are not too woo-woo. They're very, and there's also lots of science behind things like affirmations. I love affirmations personally, and just any type
mm,
of meditation because your brain can just do more when you meditate, I think. Mm.
Uh, That's yeah, that's a good point. I do think maybe I'm being hard on myself, like, oh, I need to be more spiritual, but to your point, my spiritual practice could just be like gratitude and
Mm.
acceptance and self-love and all these other things that I'm trying to practice every day, right? So perhaps some grace in that would be helpful.
Yeah, you can never be like you never use the word should and just I should be doing more. We should all be doing more maybe, but
Mm.
just do whatever feels right and enough.
Hmm. So I'm curious, obviously when it comes to more of like the erotica and the sexual wellness stuff, right? It seems like um, you go through different like stages in life where there's like different maturity cycles, right? So do
Mm.
you feel like like the older we get, like we just go to evolutions, or does that feel like because like to your point, most of the sex related stuff are like super young 21-year-olds that look a certain way, right? At least in America, that's what it feels like. um do you feel like there is more of different stages that we go through when it comes to like that journey?
Oh yeah, I think so. But I wouldn't say that every all the creators are 20 in my field at all. I think there's a whole, I mean, this is quite niche, but I think there's a whole spectrum of creators and expressions and perspectives that is shared.
Mm,
So I've had many people on my podcast, for example, who are like the top sexperts in the world, and they're all very
mm,
different. Some are more polyamorous, some are more monogamous, some are
mm,
kind of more spiritual, and others are more kind of like into kink. So everyone has
mm,
this whole like a sexual expression is so personal and so diverse that I think maybe
mm,
people assume that sex is a small category. It's actually a vast topic that
mm,
it affects so many areas of our lives.
mm.
So things
Yeah.
once you get into that space and you start discovering the sex positive space, you'll just see that it's just it's infinite because you get the
Mm,
health side, you get the fun side, you get spiritual side. So it has many,
mm.
many sides or faces to it. Mm.
But do you think the US is a little bit behind in terms of like it does feel like Europeans are a bit more open-minded, or is that not a fair generalization?
I'm not really sure because I know that a lot of the brands that I work with and a lot of the people I've interviewed are from the States. So
Hmm.
it's from my expression, I would say there's a kind of very, it's very divided. There's some very open people and there's some very closed people who are still very conservative. I'll say it's very
Okay.
but I think in Europe, 'cause I'm British, so it's a bit different. Let's say I've spent time in Paris and a lot of time in
Hmm.
Spain. So I think in the UK as well, there's a bit of prudishness, but there's also
Oh.
there's underworlds of like the kink underworld might be more prominent and maybe well known
Oh.
there. I think something like
Huh.
50 Shades of Grey was a massive phenomenon for my industry. I can't remember which
Hmm.
year that was, maybe 2012, but that was a big
Right.
moment for female sexuality and getting
Hmm.
BDSM into the mainstream. Because before that book would have been hidden in an erotic shelf, but it
Hmm.
was in petrol stations. It was,
Yeah.
it was all over. So it became a very mainstream thing. That brought sex toys into it because they mentioned sex
Hmm.
toys in the book.
Oh yeah.
That brought that whole world. I'm not really a fan of the story of it itself, but the phenomenon is amazing in terms of what
Yeah.
it did for erotic literature, what it's done for,
Mm,
just the conversations as well, and also just making people a little bit more
mm,
open to the idea of blindfolds or bondage
mm.
or things like that. So,
Why do you think like it seems like men are more into like the visuals, like videos, and like it seems like more
mm.
women are into novels, like erotica books. Why do you think that is? Like, or at least from my opinion, that's what it feels like is more prominent.
I'll say that's a huge generalization, but I would say it was mostly true. But I think women are also visual, probably more visual than we think. And I
Hmm.
think what's happening now, a big trend is actually audio erotica. So a lot of people
Oh,
do like sounds, ASMR, and
right,
stories, podcasts. So
right.
people are using the audio medium a lot
Hmm.
more now. Audio books even. But I'm not really sure
Yeah.
about any big erotic novels in the last few years. There's a lot of niche uh, books coming out. I read nonfiction mainly, but
Hmm.
since 50 Shades, there hasn't been anything like that big since.
Yeah, I
Mm.
remember that because even I read like the whole like trilogy and like I that was my introduction, but that's because like to your point, everyone was right. So like that's
Mm.
all everyone was talking about. So I was like, oh, I need to figure out like why is everyone. But I actually enjoyed it. I was like, oh, this is cool. Like this is different, right? It wasn't like
Mm.
was different than like the what I was reading, I think at the time, which like more like business books, right? Like how to like build your brand and like how to, sell more and like more typical personal development. So it was just nice to get away from like what I typically was doing.
Mm. Yeah, I read it, but I was actually at the time I wasn't reading many books because I didn't read books for a long time. Because I was because a writer myself, I didn't want to have any influence. I wanted to be very kind of pure in my creation. But I don't
Mm.
agree with that perspective anymore. Now I read
Mm.
so much now.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that that's a good point. Like I definitely don't read as much. Like I used to consume a lot. Like 90% of my energy was like consuming, but now it's like the opposite where it's like 90% creation and I don't consume as much because like I do think everyone's trying to say the same thing. So there's just not as much original thought, in my opinion. I mean, what
Mm.
you're doing is extremely original, right? But I think perhaps that's why you've grown such a organic, strong following because you're innovating in a space where yeah, I think you said like that in when you first did it, right? There was less variety and less authenticity, but seems like because of what you did resonated, a lot of people tried to emulate like what you did, but they did it in. I mean, I think in some ways derivatives are also a sign of creativity or art as well, right? So
Oh yeah, every voice matters, every expression has value for sure.
yeah.
But I think for me, I've garnered all these followers from different phases of my journey because I've very much been organic in terms of my content creation. That's kind of reflected my own personal journey because at first it was all about fetishism and BDSM almost, and then I landed a column with a big newspaper, and I was told not to write about those topics. Then I kind of went
Mm,
into content about female pleasure. So kind of like I think first of all my content was maybe
mm,
focused on the male audience, male spectator, but then
mm.
became female, and that kind of like and it became
Oh,
international. So along the journey, they've been very different, and also a lot of Spanish people kind of like stopped following me when they started doing content only in English.
uh,
So I've kind of sometimes I'm kind of replacing old followers with new followers,
huh.
and also becoming more female. Like it used to, now I'm the female percentage is rising a lot, which is interesting
Mm.
because I do want to
Yeah.
get more into that lifestyle space. And women in general are kind of more likely to share with their friends what they've listened to, or so that's kind of an
Mm. Hmm.
interesting consumer to have.
Do you notice there's a difference between the Spanish audience and the English speaking audience, or is not
I would
really?
say so, a big difference. I mean, I think like with my affiliate marketing stuff or my members area or things of my products, like I'll have a Spanish follower, I'll have a lot of them, but they won't actually invest in any products of mine. Whereas if I do content in English, it's just way more likely I'm going to get donations or buy me a coffees or things
Huh.
like that.
Oh,
So it's
I
very,
won-
very different. Yeah.
I wonder why that is. Huh.
I think it's a tipping culture, I would say, because that doesn't really
Mm.
exist here too much. But I think I get a lot of donations or just people who just want to buy my meditations and they're just really grateful, sometimes.
Oh. I could
So it's
see
a really
that.
nice feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas here is everyone's, I think maybe the standard of living is it's quite the struggle really. Um,
Mm.
so people are kind of they're not
Huh.
giving they're not paying for free content, you know.
Uh,
Yeah.
that's a good, as much as I hate on the capitalism American culture. I mean,
Mm,
to your point, there's some upsides, right? Which is, I think as a society, we probably do have a lot more disposable income, you know?
mm.
Um, so at least that's one thing to appreciate about the work, go culture in the US, or at least in New York City, where I spend most of my time. So,
You know, my another great thing that I love about my podcast guests, probably including yourself, is that they all have the business model that I want. So the people I interview have what I want.
huh,
So,
what do you mean by that?
so for example, a lot of people they have a personal brand, a strong personal brand. It's not
Um,
always about social media followers. That's an amplification of it, but their real juice or product is, you know, talked about on podcasts, on mailing lists,
mm,
maybe on online courses. So a lot of the people I interview, they have books, they have a TED talk, and they have maybe online courses and then premium
mm,
coaching. So that's the kind of model that I want. But because I'm so diverse and into so many things, it's hard to kind of think
huh.
what's the thing that I'm going to offer? Where's my expertise?
Ah,
'Cause I'm not. So is this something that I really? This is something that I really get. Even like that's maybe probably what attracted me to your profile or your media one sheet, which is actually
mm,
four pieces per page. Or it's so is this kind of idea of the business side? 'Cause I'm interested in that as a as a personal brand. That's something that I am
huh.
actually trying actively to create and thinking about what are my
Ah,
colors, what's my message, what's
oh,
something that encompasses everything I do. And that's why I've come up with a term now, holistic self-love,
mm,
because I want to really promote self-care and prioritizing pleasure, which is
mm,
that's like the sexuality part, but other things like pampering yourself or reading the good books, eating
mm,
well. So that's what I want. I want what kind of like, oh, even like doing
huh.
masterminds you're doing. I've never done a webinar live. I'm still
Uh,
shy in that aspect. So I need to kind of
oh,
come out of
really?
my shell a little bit more and connect a bit more with my audience. So that's what I
Mm,
want to do and start giving,
mm.
hosting retreats is something I really want to
Oh
do.
my God. I know it's so much fun.
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of retreats lately and it's just so much fun. Like I love it. Um, that's so funny you mentioned that because I think we always want what the other person has, right? Because I look at you and I'm like, I wish I could be like remotely close to where what you've built, right?
Really, how? Why is that?
I mean, you have like in my opinion, like a very specific like brand where I feel like I'm all over the place. Where like one
Mm,
day, like last week I did a men's retreat, and then before that I did like a sales retreat, but it was more around like healing and self-acceptance, but it was just packaged for like really ambitious sellers that are making like $500,000 to $1 million a year. So long story short, I feel like I'm all over the place and I feel like you have a very clear like message, right? So it's just interesting to hear that you think that I'm kind of like focused. But I do think I I think something that you do really well is that could sell like pretty well actually, whether it's mastermind or
mm.
webinars. And maybe we could do this together because I feel like
Oh,
I'm
wow.
trying to get people to not give a shit about what other people think. And
Mm,
I think that would get like, even if it's just like a webinar, like once a month or something, like I think a lot of people would attend that because people come to me and they're like, I don't know how you do it. Like you just like cry on LinkedIn or like you just write about like, very vulnerable stuff. And they're like, I would never be able to do that on LinkedIn with, 18,000 followers. Like I would just be scared. So I think when you said that, I just don't care about what other people think. Like that would get like I think a lot of
well,
people
that'd
would
be
be
amazing if you want to do that. Because for me, it's been very because I see my growth as being quite gradual, but with some times when I've had, a TV appearance or something that's I've gone peaks and troughs. I've had
Hmm.
times when I was in the Guardian, I wrote an article and it got to number three, so my website crashed. I've had a lot of
Wow.
moments of like, wow, lots of
Huh.
exposure. So I've had those days of, when trolling is non-stop or what have you.
Uh,
But a lot of my articles for El País, which is like the New York Times of Spain, it's a very big newspaper where they were digital. I wrote over 100 articles. And it was really fun because sometimes
huh.
I would write some very provocative stuff. This is before I was spiritual, but now I wouldn't go
Mm.
to that extreme in some of the titles I wrote. But anyway, like for example, I don't know if you know in Catalonia, do you know the story of Catalonia that people want to be independent here in Barcelona? It's in a
Mm.
region called Catalonia. So
Oh,
there's a lot of
okay.
like local, how would I say it, local tension sometimes. The
Uh,
people, speaking Catalan or speaking Spanish. And then I learned that the Catalans actually have sex in Spanish. So I kind of wrote an article about that, and they had to kind of put all the comments on moderation. I was like, ha ha ha. So I don't really do things like that anymore, but I didn't care at the time. Anyway, I
huh.
used to get these comments, and the first few comments were like, "Yeah, great article, we agree." And the fifth one would come in, it's like, "This is terrible, scandalous, blah blah." And I was like, "Yeah," because I was thinking because these are the articles that get to the top 10 because it's
Mm.
creating some kind of debate and controversy
Ah.
in the comments. And we were told never to
Huh.
intervene, so it would take a life of its own. And I was like,
Mm.
"Yeah, bring it on." So when I had bad comments, and those were the bad comments were the ones that inspired new articles. I mean, someone saying, yeah, well done, that's not going to inspire me for the next article. But someone who disagrees
Mm.
and they don't quite get it, then I'll clarify
Wow.
another article with some more
Huh.
provocation. Sometimes I was in the shower thinking, yeah, I'm going to write that.
Oh, it's
So
so
I just
interesting.
didn't care at all.
Wow.
So, and also I think,
That's a gift, honestly, because I'm like the opposite. Like when I do touch a nerve with people and then I start getting text messages or DMs, like I freak out. I'm like, why so many people like against my what I'm saying? But to your point, like because it's like more controversial. But I
mm,
have the opposite where I'm like, but then eventually, like a week later, I'll be like, all right, like I'll forget it. But like for that week, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, why is everyone reaching out to me? You know, it's like it
but,
freaks
but,
me
but,
out.
but my content is not, I wouldn't say it's, like people know I'm not trying to attack anyone, even though I might have different ideas. I might have kind of provocative ideas, but they're not really the type of ideas that are supposed to create any type of, hate or
Mm,
division or anything like that. They're just
yeah.
opinions that could be, seen as very strange or liberated or what have you.
Mm,
Um,
okay, I
but
see what
but
you're saying.
but also with comments on YouTube, for example, it's interesting because when I get bad comments or something, I just say this is a message from the universe saying if you want to be big and successful,
Mm,
you need to you're gonna have more of this. And one of my
huh.
friends actually is very spiritual. She sent me this podcast. I can't remember what it was called. I never listened to podcasts. And I talked about the celebrity frequency, which is not just having the mansion and the riches, but it's also receiving the lawsuits. You know what I mean? Because to be
Oh,
on that frequency is like you're attracting the
huh.
good and the bad of any. So it's kind of nice to have a
Oh,
simpler life when you think about it that way. You don't need to get
mm,
to those levels of massive fame and
mm,
fortune. So I think for me, maybe my goal at the beginning was about fame and recognition, whereas
mm,
now it's more about just acknowledgement and getting my message out there. It's not less about me. You
mm,
know what I mean?
mm,
So I'm quite detached from what people think. So I think for a lot of people who
mm,
want to be content creators, that's something that stops them. And I think that's a
mm,
real pity because I don't really care. I mean, I have a lot of videos out there that always bring bad comments and I just leave them there. And I think it shows a lot of strength of character to leave a
mm,
bad comment there when I could easily just delete it.
mm.
You know, I,
Yeah.
I think it just shows that it's
Huh.
okay because that's to be expected, I think.
Yeah. All right. So let me get your opinion since because you get,
Mm,
I'm sure, a lot more comments than I do. But like there was an instance where like I was just trying to be, not try to be funny, right? But I think I was like doing my 16-day road trip across, and then I was like near the Niagara Falls area. And then I just was just like, just as a joke, I was like, hey guys, like I'm homeless, but really like I just had like a lot of clothes in bags in my Tesla. So I was just
mm,
like live, it was like a quick TikTok video or something like that, or on LinkedIn. And one of my old clients was like, hey, like you shouldn't be joking. There's like actually homeless people out there.
mm,
And like I don't know, I was like, dude, like I'm not allowed to make a joke, but I was just, and then like the first 5 seconds, I was like, I'm just kidding, like I'm just living out of my Tesla for this road trip, and like but it's been amazing, like meeting so many interesting people, going up to, 100 random strangers in Canada, and that was like the message I was trying to send was like, hey, like don't be afraid to like go out there and like live your dreams, right? But then I started getting a bunch of people like saying like, yo, this is BS. And like, I don't know. And then that kind of like, I was like, oh my God, like, am I not allowed to make a joke anymore? Like, I don't know. But stuff like that, but think like, 10 different moments like that where I'm just like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what to do anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, it's happened to me with a few topics. Like I wrote something about what it's like to be British in Spain after Brexit. And I made this video and I said something British expat. And the word expat is very provocative. People say you're not an expat, you're an immigrant. Why is it that the Brits or the Anglo-Saxon people, when they go abroad, they are
Oh,
expats? But if
oh,
there's low-wage workers who come in, they're immigrants. So it was a kind of like a
oh. That's uh, that's
it's
thought
about
provoking.
privilege and stuff. But I mean, people say, I mean, if you read any newspaper about Brexit, they don't say British immigrants in Spain, they say British expats. But the real
Oh,
meaning of expat is someone who's just abroad for a certain amount of time, then they go back to their original country. But a lot of the British
uh,
expats, they're kind of here for life kind of thing. But they're
uh,
still referred to as expats. So people see that as a real like privilege of
ooh, that's
because we're not leaving because
interesting.
like there was no work in England. I left. I came for the sun, So it's
Yeah.
a different
Huh.
situation. So I had so many comments about that, and then
Huh.
I just kind of in YouTube I just like banned the word immigrant in the comments. So I took care of that because it was just getting too much
Oh my
of
God,
this
that's
stuff.
crazy.
Yeah, and then I have another video called promiscuity and pair bonding, which is a really interesting topic
Huh.
about how people who are really promiscuous have trouble finding partners, like pair
Yeah.
bonding. They're talking
Yeah.
about women in particular. I just don't like this idea that it's okay for men to be promiscuous and not women, because I think all of these people who are having
Hmm.
participating in hookup culture that they're not doing it alone. It's
Hmm.
two people. It's not very attractive for me, even if someone has no criteria with with who they're
Hmm.
meeting every weekend or what have you. So I made a video about that, and
Hmm.
then you get all these misogynistic comments.
Oh.
Like,
Eh, dude,
yeah,
thank you. Like, I mean, that's the beauty of podcasting because, like, not everyone in my normal day life that I hang out with on the weekends and stuff, like, well, has exposure to a lot of the stuff that you. So it's just cool to see. I mean, hopefully, I would get to a point like you one day where I am getting that many comments. Like, but I love how you're able to reframe it, right? Because I made a video that was about like just the value that I got from coaching, and then, but I also shared about the value of therapy as well. And then there was like so many people that messaged me like in DMs, and they were like, "Oh, like you shouldn't be talking about like coaching, like or therapy is just as valuable as coaching." I'm like, I'm not you know what I mean? Like just like things like that that I'm just like, man, like people, it's just I don't know. But I love how you were able to reframe it because I'm like, oh, maybe I am becoming more because it just seems like I'm getting a lot more comment. Like every month it's like more and more, and I'm like, oh my God. But if that means I'm on the right path is what I'm saying.
yeah. But also, if you that's an opportunity for you to clarify in another video,
Oh,
because if that video is getting traction, you know that those keywords are working. So it's good to kind of
oh.
clarify, because a lot of these creators who are very successful, they're talking that they're giving the same message in every video, just in a different order.
Hmm.
So, and then people kind of expect that sometimes
Huh.
even though it's just a different message or a different day, but the
Hmm.
same message. But so I would say, yeah, what I really meant, and then because you using those keywords again, and then you can kind of,
Ooh, you're so smart. All right. This is why I feel like you're like a mentor, right, at this
oh
point. Like,
wow.
because you're definitely further along than I am on the journey. But I like what you're saying. So, and the celebrity frequency, I feel like that's like a catchy, like, yeah, I think I'm gonna, I mean, I think I'll make a video like about that, right? Because I do think that's something that is like very valuable. Like the way you framed it, like, I mean, we could do like a podcast episode just about that because I do think there's a lot of that's like the one that's probably the one thing that most people that are afraid of being creator or that want aspire to kind of get to where you are like is most afraid of, I think, is just like the negative comments. Seems like.
Yeah, and also what's happening as well recently to me is that I appeared in a very big article about sex toy development, and I was someone just done this collaborative article where I was the headline, and then they just interviewed a couple of brands, but I was kind of like the star of the article kind of thing. And it was
Mm,
kind of cool because some other sex bloggers from Colombia, because it's in Spanish, made some comments or made some short reels about this interview, and they're very nice to me. Said, "Oh, Venus Sahara, she's in Barcelona and she's got 800 products, blah blah."
mm,
And so that was kind of cool. But then it gets someone else who's using my image and then criticizing what I do and just using my image in Twitter and then creating this whole thread against me.
huh.
But
Oh
that,
wow.
if you let's imagine you know what's happened to Jay Shetty recently. He's come under attack.
Yeah,
Imagine
I know.
what he must have to deal with on his level, and you
I
you
can't
can't
even
really get
imagine.
sucked into that. So
Yeah.
you have to see these things as opportunities really
Hmm.
to and just to kind of get acclimatized to that type of attention, and also being
Hmm.
okay with being misunderstood. That's so important,
Hmm.
because a lot of the time I am misunderstood. I mean, what I do,
Hmm.
a lot of people don't understand and the people judge me, but I have to let go of that and just be
Hmm.
okay with being misunderstood. Um,
This, I feel like this is like a therapy session.
yeah.
So I would say at the height of my, I guess I was like doing a lot of DE and I work, like at LinkedIn,
Mm.
and there was like a huge misunderstanding. And now, like having empathy, like a lot of Latinx women feel like their voice is not heard, right? So, at least in the States, so I remember like I created like an allyship workshop that was like around like the Black Lives Matters movement, and like it got like a lot of attention. Like I was doing it out of the goodness of my heart, but I didn't do a proper job of acknowledging like, hey, the Hispanics of LinkedIn group was the inspiration that gave me like the framework, and then I just did like a derivative of that. But long story short, like everyone was like, "Oh, you're like such a typical man. Like you're like a misogynist and all this stuff." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm like the most feminine dude like that I know, right?" But I mean, it's not even about that, right? But I just saw that like there was like the height of the Black Lives movements, and women, are always feeling like men are like mansplaining, whatever the stuff that we do, right? Unconsciously or consciously. But it like really messed me up. Like I think I was like traumatized from that whole experience. And then I was just like, okay, like I guess I shouldn't like put out my good intentions, because every time I do that, like I get some sort of like radical feedback. So I kind of like diminished my light, because I was just like, or I stopped kind of doing that stuff, even though like that was like some of the most impactful work that I was doing, that like all these recruiting teams and like all these HR departments were like, Davidson, like your workshop was like amazing. Like keep doing that. I got so much value from that. So yeah.
Yeah, and everyone is going to agree with you, especially if you're doing something that's divisive. And yeah, you
Yeah.
have to be.
Yeah. But no, this is really good. I feel like this is like a really deep conversation. A couple more questions for you, because I do
Mm.
think so, obviously one of the downsides of being like a content creator, or being a writer. So like being a writer, like even with books and all that, like it's hard to really predict, like from a business standpoint, like how well it will do. And it's more long term, right? Like books like take a while to create, and to market and all of that. Like folks that are more used to like traditional jobs, and like, hey, I check in, I get like a normal 100K salary, for instance, right? Like, but they like aspire, they would love to like just leave it all behind, and just like, because there's, yes, you said there's folks that do the side hustle and then eventually, right? But what are your thoughts on like just burning the boats versus like, oh, make sure you actually like have a decent side hustle before you kind of quit your like really high paying job?
Well, my boats were burnt for me, so for me that was probably the best thing. But I
Uh-huh.
wouldn't have burnt it myself
Oh,
because
okay. You wouldn't. You wouldn't.
I came from a lot of instability, professional instability before that moment. I was losing jobs every few, for a couple of years or even months.
Yeah.
I felt like I was reinventing myself the whole time. I think
Yeah.
it takes a lot of discipline to actually have a side hustle and give something else your time. I think I admire those people. But I think it just takes, Saturday mornings but sometimes if it's the right thing, the boats will be burnt, I think.
Mm,
I think I think it's a much slower process.
mm.
Yeah, but it does take time to actually build something as well. So you can't just
Yeah.
expect some
Yeah.
results in the first couple of months. It's establishing yourself as any type of thought leader
Mm,
takes time. So it depends on how different the side hustle is from your main thing.
mm,
Sometimes it's an extension of the same sector, and you can use the contacts or what have
mm.
you've got from one to another.
Yeah.
But sometimes if it's unrelated, then that's a whole different challenge, I think.
So you said you wouldn't burn boats yourself, right? Obviously, yours is more macroeconomic related, but some people would argue like you should burn the boats yourself because that's the quickest way to, is that, I mean, and maybe those people are coming from a place of privilege or like maybe they have more resources, capital, or connections wise. So do you still firmly believe that, like, let's say like you and I who don't come from, it sounds like, like trust fund parents or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Would you still recommend like doing the side hustle first and then eventually
I can see why
transition?
it's tempting, but I'm glad that I didn't have that. For me, I'm glad that, it was a case of, because before I was in the world of, marketing and sales, I was used to doing things like email campaigns and,
Yeah.
outreach emails trying to get clients or so I was just doing the same, but I was the product kind of thing. So
Mm,
I gathered those skills before. I probably wouldn't have done it because I was so I just wanted to be a cared for employee, but
mm,
then the universe had different ideas for me. So I'm really
mm,
glad it happened in the right way, in the way it did, which was just like you've got
mm,
nothing now. And
mm,
I mean, I was literally I had a rat infestation and I had an empty fridge and I had to buy poison before food in 2009. And I was
oh
selling
wow.
luxury apartments because you imagine the contrast. I mean, it was insane.
Wow.
So every day was about survival. And at the same time, I was negotiating some really big sales because I was in luxury real estate.
Huh.
And those sales took a few months. And then by the end, I was just elated. I took money that was going to last for about a year. And I just said, all right,
Mm,
now I'm going to start my blog because I'm so tired. So I think it's
mm,
if you can get into a situation where you have a lump sum of money, if you ever received that, then
mm,
take that as an opportunity. That was my situation. So
mm,
I was burnt out from working for someone else, and I got to a point where I was just negotiating two sales, and I wasn't doing any more viewings because I just couldn't see the time, money. I didn't just didn't make sense to me because
yeah.
to try and invest in more sales at a time when nothing was selling. So
Hmm.
for me at the time, I was kind of building up my website, and then to the point where it was kind of like well, like I said, it was a side hustle, and then made these two sales, then left the job, and then I was 100% blogger. But I do
Mm,
believe, as from a spiritual perspective, once you're on the right path, then the universe conspires. Because then for me, I got
mm.
a book deal within 3 weeks of selling. It was like it was so
Oh,
crazy. I mean,
wow.
it was very very
Huh.
aligned.
I feel like what you're saying is just so counterintuitive to like a lot of the corporate trainings that I guess I'm done, like, more of like the Fortune 1000 types of, like, it's just what you're saying. Like, I feel like it's like so different than what everyone else is telling us, right? Like, working at LinkedIn or Microsoft, or like, it's just like, have your SWOT analysis and like have a project, you know what I mean? Like it's like, oh, figure out like all, do you marry some of that stuff too? Like more of like the cerebral like thinking, or would you say you're more grounded in like spirituality?
I think I'm quite practical in my approach. I'm definitely grounded. So I
Mm,
think that's the best of both worlds, really, having that
mm,
spiritual approach, but without the abundance blocks. Because a lot of people who are in the spiritual world are kind of not they don't really appreciate money. They just think it
mm,
should be free or what have you. But I don't agree with that. So I do
mm.
believe in comforts as well, and
Yeah.
but I do believe in applying some kind of business kind of perspective to spirituality. I just find that
Okay.
so
I
interesting.
see. So you're pretty good balance. It seems like you're pretty well balanced in general across every, like, it seems like you're very versatile where like you can kind of like go the more like business thinking route, but then you also can also be like soft and like, I don't know. It just seems like you're very adaptable in general from our interactions.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great skill to have, especially since the pandemic. Because before that, people maybe just have one or two skills. And for me, it was something that I didn't think was a good thing when I was in my 20s and I kept losing jobs. But then
Mm.
that gave me all these different experiences that I can, use now,
Yeah.
um, my different areas of what I do. But what I'm really focused on right now is creating affiliate content. I have a
Oh,
strategy to create more affiliate content and buying guides for my website. So top five
huh.
this, best this. Because I've got all this knowledge. I'm going to repurpose all my
Ooh.
knowledge and have top five different products, and then there's going to be affiliate links on each one. So I'm going to
Huh.
start making these different categories, let's say for couples, for budget, luxury,
Mm.
G-spot, travel, things
Huh.
like that. So I'm going to make all these different buying guides because I really wanted to change my business model to become more kind of focused on passive income.
Mm.
So creating all that affiliate content plus
Mm.
meditations, digital products, and then online courses. And
Huh.
I've got a couple of online courses on different platforms which are
Mm.
non-exclusive. So because I just think it's really exciting to make passive income. It's not really passive because it's recurring income, and
Mm.
that's just a nice feeling when you get these. You just check these graphs or
Yeah.
things are going
Yeah.
up. I mean, for me, like I've got this very kind of like strategy or goal now. It's if I make 100 euros a day in passive income, that's kind of basic survival level in Barcelona. I can kind of live with that. But
Yeah.
then if it's 200 a day, it's going to be comfort level. Then 300 a day is going to be goddess level because that's a lot of
Mm.
money in Barcelona. And if that's just
Mm.
from passive income, I mean, wow. Because I really would like to have that. Because not coming from, trust fund parents is that I do value, stability. I want some kind of stability that doesn't require hustle. So
Mm.
that for me represents that's what passive income represents for me. It's just some kind
Mm.
of money that's always coming in, and I haven't sweated for it. You know what I mean? It's just a nice,
Yeah. I
and
can
that can free up time and effort for other things that you want to do as well.
You know
Mm.
what's interesting? I think you would actually enjoy the brand builders group community a lot.
Ah, maybe
Have
I'm
you
very
have
into
you
personal brand. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the ones that created like the Lewis Howes, Ed Milet and Tom and Lisa Bilyeu communities.
Okay.
So they're really good at like they're very good at the monetization of everything, like the books, so they have like four different tracks. One is like seven figure entrepreneur, and then so it's like how to get from six figures to seven figures, and then they have like the New York Times best-selling author track, and then they have the podcast track, which clearly they've done for like Lewis Howes, right? And like all these other. So it's not cheap, that community, but it's probably the quality of people that I've met, like folks like you and I have been like solid, like people that I haven't found anywhere else actually in terms of like not only like grounded in their mission, but also like to match with like the business acumen as well. So,
Yeah, at the
um,
end of the day, it's about, making money and, not only celebrity frequency level, but you want to just be comfortable in your life and
yeah.
then freedom to do what you want.
So I can connect you to the folks there. So because my coach, long story short, he was like the number one guy at Salesforce. So he was making like a million over a million a year. So what he was like teaching sellers, he's the one that ran the retreat in California. He referred me to the community, and like everything he says, like I'm like yeah, because like he's just like doing really well in terms of building his mastermind and his courses where he makes like millions from that. um so he was like, yeah, I think you would benefit from this community, and I was skeptical because I'm like, dude, I've joined a million communities, like I don't need to join another one, but so far like everyone I've met through it, I'm like, wow, like these are solid people that I would love to continue to like build deeper relationships with. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's nice to have to find that balance of, personal brand and then the results as well. Because that's something I really
Yeah.
want to get to as well. Because I mean, I don't just have a message about, let's say, female pleasure or something, or even self-love. I do want to kind of market my own lifestyle as well,
Yeah.
because I think there's a lot of things that can benefit other people from
Yeah.
just valuing your sleep and having
Mm.
self-compassion. If you
Yeah.
need 5 more minutes, it's okay. I'm not going to get up at 5 a.m., or even just like buying the best food. I buy organic, plant-based, from local
Mm.
farmers and making time. I actually go to the spa and the gym like in the week. So that helps me feel abundant and in control of my time. So I
Mm.
don't have to go at the weekend or after work hours like everyone else does. I can go on a
Mm.
Friday morning because I can, and that helps
Mm.
me feel abundant. So that kind of lifestyle is something that I really want to, and
Mm.
also I have an ikigai lifestyle because I'm doing something with
Mm.
purpose and that the world needs and something that I love and
Mm.
that's bringing money. So I'd like to kind of market my ikigai
Hmm.
lifestyle, which has been an effortless thing. It's just all come to me in a very
Hmm.
organic way, and I never restricted myself. Because I mean, going
Hmm.
back to what my who my rivals were, let's say 10 years ago, they were, let's say, Spanish sexologists or Spanish journalists, but today they're still doing the same thing. Whereas I've
Hmm.
just been constantly, up
Oh,
evolving, going to different, different fields and
yeah.
adding new skills to my skill set, like
Hmm.
podcasting or, you know, um,
Hmm.
and public speaking as well. So it's always been about always adding new skills and always transforming. So I think it's really important to evolve.
Hmm. Oh, I just realized some people are during the live stream that I totally did not respond to. So, oh, hey, what questions do you have? What questions do you have for Nina's? Um, oh, they said essential conversations. Um, so, oh, and are you still good on time? I also want to be mindful
That's
of
okay.
your energy because I just have so many questions that I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I could ask you like questions forever. What's the boundary so that way I'm not like pushing it too.
No, but I know how to answer a politician. Yeah, I could say ask me what you want, but I might give a politician's answer. You know what I
No,
mean?
no. What I think what yeah I think what's interesting for you for me is just like I just haven't met a lot of people and it's funny because even though what you're saying is we're in different niches, I guess you could
Mm,
say, but um what you just said about like actually taking time to like because in corporate I would be like am I the only crazy one that's like let me take a walk around the block because and
mm,
a lot of these great corporations like we're right in the middle of Manhattan next to like Central Park or maybe we're next to Bryant Park or whatever it is, right? Like we're just go go go, so even if we're traveling for conferences we're in all these like amazing places but everyone's just like so busy getting after it, making more money that like I'm like at LinkedIn, we did have like people that came to do like kickboxing and yoga, meditation, and all these conscious teachers and conscious business courses. And like I felt like I was the only crazy one that's taking advantage of all of it, you know? And then I'm just like, huh, like why don't more corporate people take advantage of that? But then I saw that, oh, okay, like even though they say like, hey, you should be involved and volunteer for the social impact team and do all this stuff. And like I was super involved with all of that, right? I was like leading some of those orgs, but I got like flack from my management and like folks that are like, hey, you shouldn't be like that's like year two or three when you've like established yourself. And I'm just like, what? Like, isn't it doesn't wouldn't it make sense if I'm fully sourced and I'm like meditate, like I do meditation, like I'm grounded, like everyone wins, right? I get to be more productive, I'll be able to close more deals. But people saw it as like I almost feel guilty that I was going to meditation class. Like it was weird. So I think, long story short, I think we're kind of sharing the same message. It's just packaged slightly differently. But I wouldn't have thought that just based on like just looking at the outside, like if I was just reading your bio and stuff like that, that we have that many common um missions and what we're trying to achieve in the world. Yeah.
It's one of my challenges actually, because I do want to bring all these things more to light. And so when you have many
Hmm.
interests, it's really hard to kind of, zone in on a couple of things. Because I have so many things I want to say, but I guess in my speaker facet, that's probably where I get more of a chance to share that type of knowledge. And because when I started doing Toastmasters 5 years ago,
Oh
and
yeah.
the president told me not to speak about sex, so that kind of like, okay, you don't want to
Hmm.
speak about sex, then it opened me up to the actually sharing about the books I'm reading and the personal development side and things like that.
Hmm.
So that kind of,
Hmm.
and I did want to kind of get into public speaking about my lifestyle as well,
Um,
because I've
yeah.
already carved out a path for myself with no fear. And going back to what you were saying
Hmm.
about not caring what other people think, recently I went to an event at my private members club. It's all about reputation management, also
Hmm.
things about LinkedIn and recruitment. And for example, they spoke about being Googled when you're
Hmm.
looking for work, and if you've got this party image, then it could go against you, and trying
Yeah.
to clean up your social media and being
Hmm.
mindful about what you're putting out there as an individual with who has maybe a corporate job. And I
Hmm.
thought it was really interesting because I gave up that worry the day I
Huh.
decided to become a sex blogger, because the day you become a
Uh,
content creator in the world of sexuality,
yeah.
cannot be thinking like that because I've
Yeah.
closed many doors. If I want to go back into the corporate world,
Yeah, yeah.
but I think it's nice to have that freedom as well. Because I remember doing things when I was a student, let's say I was doing voluntary work in inner city schools in the French classes, and I hated it, but I was doing it because it looks good on my CV. So
Mm,
why are we doing things just to impress someone you don't know yet, or to
mm,
look good on LinkedIn? No. So
right.
for me now, I'm just all about I'm going to do what feels right today, and
Mm.
it'll be fine. You know.
Yeah. It's funny, like I do think, and I think that's where we're definitely on the same page. Like I always do things that make
Mm,
that feels right. But then I
mm,
realize, well, I'm married, so I do think I'm like, okay, I have to consider my wife, right? Right. So,
mm,
but long story short, like I feel like that's the way I think, and I more of like impulsive where I just do whatever is on my mind. But then it seems like 99% of the world is like, what are you doing? Like you have to have a strategy, you have to have a plan. Like you can't just be like existing in life. But I don't know. I feel like I've made it pretty far with like no plan, you know? But it's just
mm,
like it's just but then when you get thousands of people telling you that over the course of your lifetime, you're like, what's wrong with me? Like, is it should I feel guilty that I'm just like doing whatever I want every day? Like, I don't know, you know? So I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm 36 years old. So I don't know if like maybe that's just like the time period where people are like, oh, you got to be serious. Like, you got to, do all these things. Like, because that's what a responsible adult should be doing.
I think
So,
I don't know when sometimes what is our own messaging and what's from someone else. I think sometimes that
mm,
line is also blurry for me because over the years I've thought,
mm,
what if I didn't live on the Mediterranean? Would I? And I lived in an environment maybe more like New York where people
mm,
maybe push me more. So I mean, I'm also a product of my environment because I'm living
mm,
in a place where people do value 2 hour lunches and
mm.
eating late and having, siestas and maybe
Ah,
sitting outside in a terrace at night. And
mm,
they have maybe 20 bank holidays in the year, plus your annual leave of 5 weeks. So, there's a whole culture
crazy.
that this is a culture
Yeah.
that appreciates the family, especially, and your
Mm,
downtime. Whereas that means also that I would never hire a life coach who's in Barcelona. I
mm.
would want someone who's way more kick-ass and in a place
Right.
where they're more results focused. So
Hmm.
I think for me, it's about finding my own personal balance. That's why this is a great place to live here, but be working with American and German companies and
Mm.
things like that. So I get kind of
Hmm.
best of both worlds.
That's funny. So one of the lives, some of the audience is saying, I think someone said they think you make a lot of money. Is that is that accurate?
I'm comfortable, but I would like a little bit more because I want to have some more geographic mobility right
Uh,
now. So I would
yeah.
like,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, so I mean, are you open to talking about the finances, or is that like something you don't really like sharing?
I think money's a fascinating topic. I'm really interested. I have a whole shelf of money books back here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm actually lost about. I mean, I learned a lot. I read a lot of books about the energy of money, but in terms of the practicalities, that's
Hmm.
where I'm not so good.
Hmm.
Where I could really improve. I think like the
Okay.
world of investments, I don't really know anything about.
Uh,
I'm just kind of like the energy of making it is kind of where my knowledge.
hmm.
Mm, yeah.
Have you ever been to Tony Robbins in Fiji? He has an event called it's 7 days in a resort. It's called Wealth and Life Mastery.
Okay.
I think you would actually enjoy that. So the life mastery part, like I'm sure you have down. Like that's more of like, the organic and farm to table. Like that's more of like the stuff that you probably already know. More like he talks a lot about colonics, gut health, and like,
Mm.
more of that stuff like stem cell, etc. But the 4 days that I think you would probably enjoy a lot is, and I could try to share like what I got from it, and then you could
Oh
let me
yeah,
know.
yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
So there's 10 points that he makes that is the foundation of wealth mastery. So he said there's like 10 avenues, and ideally you could have a diversified approach. Like that's the
Mm.
best way. So you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. So entrepreneurship, which clearly you've done that one, is one. The second one is buying um existing businesses where the baby boomers or like the folks that are retiring do not feel confident that they can pass it on to their kids because their kids are just not business minded in terms of, so you can buy a lot of those businesses and just like, more of like hire like a general manager to do all that. He said that's really good because like they rather see their business grow and continue to succeed. And then he also says investing in like diversifying in international stocks. So it's not just the country that you're familiar with. Number four, real estate investing, which because you were in that world. And then he said crypto slash blockchain, but he said more specifically as of right now, like just Bitcoin, just because everything else is a little bit riskier. But so that's like number six. And then tax efficiency, so like being able to like maximize all of that. But anyways, like I think you would enjoy that because he goes like really deep into that. And then the folks that go to these communities are like typically pretty far along in terms of their like wealth uh journey. So they're also like really good people to like mentor slash like bounce ideas off of.
It's interesting, Will, because I've been around people who are doing very well a lot of the times, and sometimes look, working luxury real estate, no one was had a mortgage. Everyone was paying with investing in a fun like playtime property in Barcelona with cash, So I've been around a lot of those worlds, but sometimes I find that sometimes people might not be grounded, or they might lose touch with
Mhm.
reality sometimes. So I
Mm,
think that's why people have abundance blocks. When you see people who are very wasteful or very materialistic, or that they got where they got to, maybe exploiting others or not having that kind
mm,
of awareness about all the people, all the families that live
mm,
their decisions and things like
mm,
that. So so
mm,
so I think sometimes that's why I wouldn't. I think that maybe mentally, when we think about a perfect amount of money, it's always uh, reflects where we think we could be and still be comfortable and
mm,
not change too much. Because for me, I don't really need like the first thing, if I got like a big injection of money, the first thing I'll probably do is probably like travel more, and maybe real estate would be my first type of investment, because I think I would buy
mm.
a building in Barcelona because I think that's a really good thing to do, because I know the market, and
Mm,
that'd be something that would constantly make me money. And
mm,
also think about how that could complicate your life as well. Because
mm.
having all these different things, it requires more, investment of your own time just to kind of manage everything and understand everything,
Well,
and also delegating and trusting others to kind of look after things for you. So,
yeah, he's a very big proponent of delegating, right? So like Tony Robbins has like a tier that's like 100, I think it's like $100,000 to join that one a
oh
year.
well.
And in that he's just essentially teaching you how to delegate like very intelligently and how to like groom like all of your the operators that run each of your businesses. Um but yeah, I mean Tony's like very masculine and like he's very much about like, but it is interesting. I do agree with you. I like and that's why I left the tech sales world because like I did see all these people that like had amazing beautiful skis like houses in like the mountains in Colorado and they're like, living like amazing lives on paper, but I can tell that I'm like, dude, like you're like not happy, like the energy is just like off and I mean I wouldn't say every successful person, right? But I did see there was a lot of like very high top performers that were like they look like they're gonna have a heart attack like any day, and I was like, I don't want that. So
Also, from a health perspective, I think also I've seen a lot of excess in those worlds. And for me, I've been sober for 9 years, like no alcohol. So I'm kind of glad that I've kind of made that decision a long time ago, so that when bigger, like more abundance comes to me, it's kind of I'm pretty grounded, Because I mean, I
mm,
remember years ago when I used to get some kind of business opportunity or a book deal, I would be
mm,
like, first thing would be buying some champagne. I'm like, yeah, because I was euphoric.
mm,
But then now, because imagine if there's no limit on the excess, it's kind of not good. I'd
mm,
rather be spending my money on pampering. That's kind of
mm,
where I'm at, going to spas. One day I'd love to become a
mm.
spa reviewer. That would be really cool.
Oh, cool. Uh,
Yeah.
this is so random. Rohan asked, I have a question that's a little different from your topic, but when someone tells you that I'm a trader, what do you think about traders?
Traders. I mean, what in what like a personal or a business sense?
Trade options trading, like people that trade in the
Oh,
market and
trading. Oh,
that's
trading. Okay.
yeah.
I don't really know anything about that world, to be honest. I would like to know more, but it's not a world that I would love to know more about investing in general and just
Hmm.
yeah. That's very fast paced of my I have respect for the brain, how the brain works in those environments. But it's
Yeah.
not something I really know. I think that's the opposite from my life. I mean,
Oh, I see. It's
yeah,
funny
like all
because
that
like
makes sense.
even because you have all like sometimes I think people think like all these creators are just like rolling in millions of dollars, right? But what I'm getting is like that's not always the case, right? Maybe like some are, but they also need to be grounded in like business like sense as well, right? Is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, but I value minimalism, to be quite honest, in terms of, I mean, for me, I'm more interested in, you know, spending time in different places because I have family in all different places around the world, and to be more accessible to those different people in my life would be something, and just more pampering in general. That's how I really want to spend my life. I don't want to
Yeah.
because I interviewed a woman who's also a CEO because she had this dream one night and then to start her own company. And then she's saying the reality of that, how many hours you're working.
Mm,
It's not really the life I want, and I don't need it because there's also an expression, it's an Arabic expression, which is the
mm,
richest man is not who has the most, it's who needs the least.
mm,
So I do think I think there's value in minimalism, but the things you have are really good. That's kind of my philosophy. Um,
mm,
I mean, I think, for example, looking at back to real estate, I would rather, an okay apartment in a really good area than a really nice apartment in a kind of cheap area. Because I want to
mm,
see comfort when I walk out the door and
mm.
see nice things, and
Yeah.
be in an environment there where I feel inspired and safe and things like that.
Mm.
So I value those
Yeah.
things, not so much the material. I never learned to drive, so I don't value cars. I mean,
Mm.
I just walk everywhere. I kind of think there's a beauty in really simplifying life. I think,
Hmm.
Mm.
It- yeah, I would agree with you. Like living in New York City obviously is like super expensive, right? So we lived in a very tiny apartment, but I was like right in the middle like of everything and like that was so cool to have that, whereas now like I have a really pretty big, I mean, because I grew up poor, like I pretty much I feel like live in almost like a mansion compared to what I'm used to, but it's like lonely. Like it's like I look out and there's like a lake and like it's nice. You can see the fall colors and there's like night, but and some people would be like, oh my God, I would love that. But I don't know. I personally don't really enjoy it. But it's like what everyone does, right? What society is like, you gotta buy a house, like you gotta,
Mm.
so the kids can have room to run and so it's just like one of those things that I think it's more societal. Well, and it's my wife. It's like my compromise with my wife. So
I live in a walkable city, so I know the feeling. I live really in the center. I haven't been on public transport for 4 years, so I just walk everywhere, and it's just so nice to have that flexibility and to adaptability for different social plans. It's really nice
hmm.
and not have time in commuting. So
Yeah.
mm.
Well, Venus, I took enough of your time. This has been like one of my favorite conversations, if not the like my favorite ever, I think, just because like you just have like a very different perspective than most of the guests that I bring on. But yeah, so many takeaways. So let me see if I can kind of distill what I got out of it, and then any last minute words on your end. So I'm grounded in, when you live a life of like passion and grounded in what your message and being intentional about like the message that you want to share with the world. I think things will naturally come your way, but you're also grounded in like the work and the effort and like you're not just like
Mm.
sitting there and just like waiting for things to happen, right? So you're equally putting in as much like sweat equity and intentionality and planning and execution, most importantly. So that was a huge takeaway. I got which is funny because I never like thought about this, but I like the before we prejudge someone based on like Googling them, right? It's like
Mm.
when we take the time to actually get to know them and have a deep conversation, like there's just a lot more common ground than we think, especially someone in another different country or in a completely different niche. I think if we're present to it, like there's just always connection and there's always common ground once if we choose it instead of like being quick to judge. So that
Mm.
kind of helped me be able to like just slow down and just be able to be curious more often in life. And I also like what you said about like I think what I'm getting is whether it's writing, podcasting, YouTubing, vlogging, right? Like not being afraid to try a different channel or avenue and not having the hopes or not being so attached to what the outcome may be, but more just be grounded in like, hey, if I'm providing value, if I'm expressing myself vulnerably and authentically, the opportunities will come.
Definitely. And don't let the audience or likes dominate like your creation.
Mm,
I think it's just
yeah.
about really focusing on the expression of that creativity. I think that's really
Mm,
important. As long as that feels aligned and you're not doing things for likes, I think that's really, really
yeah.
important. Wow. Mm.
Totally unrelated conversation, but I do think you have a lot of perspective. So it'd be interesting what you think. So no, based on our brief interactions and what you know about me, what do you think would be the best use of my energy? So one, I'm thinking about creating like a low ticket $100 course on just like how to build like relationships, like authentic relationships. And because of that, like your career will 10x just because of like the quality of people that you'll meet and you just don't know what the opportunities are.
Mm.
Two, my second venture is corporate consulting, like corporate training, because I come from the tech sales background. I'd be selling to like Asian sales executives because those are like a lot of the people in my community. And what I'm teaching them is like emotional and teaching their sales teams or training, doing workshops on is teaching their sales teams on emotional intelligence. So like self-regulation, but then also being able to be better at creating a better buying experience for customers, which will ultimately yield not only more revenue, but will help the company with like less conflict because people will be able to have better conflict resolution skills and things like that. So personal development, but aimed towards sellers and tech companies. Um, and the third thing is I have like a mastermind like every Monday where I am doing workshops on like basically a combination of like all the self-development done, and I'm just packaging it to help like folks just be able to have better, like more intentional, like brand building. So there is like that brand building component, but really it's just like self-development workshops. And then every other week, so that's Monday for an hour. And then every other week, I'll have like interesting folks like you that will come in and kind of share your story. And then that's also, and I'll probably live stream it and I'll chop up some of those to put on like social media and stuff like that. So I know that was a lot. What do you think?
I think it's all different. It's interesting because some of them, your client is a company. That for me
Mhm.
always feels it feels safer in terms of like financials and maybe more you
Mm,
can ask for more money in that
yeah,
sense.
for sure.
I mean, I always I'm more kind of B2B in my business model currently, but I'm kind of going to more
Mhm.
B2C. So and
Right.
the 100 the low tick, I think it's a lot of depends how much I think it's good to have different things at different levels.
Yeah. That's a low
And it
ticket.
depends on how present you need to be. For that, the $100 thing is just let's say buying a course. I mean that's kind of
Yeah, it's a
cool because
course.
it's going to be recurring. It's going to make you a lot of money in the end.
Yeah, I think so.
Whereas the other thing is time where you have to actually go and give the workshop.
Yeah.
But I think that can feel safe, that type of thing. But is
Yeah.
it? I mean, recently I just made a proposal about a business proposal, and if it said yes, it would have been stability for me and money, but it would have capped my creativity, if you see what I mean.
Mm,
So I think that,
mm,
you have to think about what's the objective. I mean, because I mean, sometimes when you make your own content, you've got and you see that flourish, that's the best feeling in the world.
mm. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think why not do all of them? And I think I'll just do what I mean. I think if you feel like it less, then just like make that price a lot higher. Just think, how can I be bothered to do it for this
Mm,
price?
mm.
But I think it's really cool to have some low ticket things which are going to just make you just be on a roll. because it wouldn't take that much to kind of actually create it, I suppose.
Yeah. And I do think that's the value that I could offer the most in the world, like just based on like what people reach out to me for and what my one-on-one clients are currently like I'm trying to teach them. But so I'm like, why don't I just create a course? So instead of having like it's just not scalable right now how I'm currently doing it. But the mastermind's nice too, because I get to like continue to build deeper relationships with interesting folks like this. So they get exposure to like very inspiring people, right? And then obviously you all get exposure as well and then tap into like my communities and my networks as well. So it's like a win-win. So that's what I'm currently doing, like all three of them, but I'll just kind of making sure that I'm on the right path.
It's good to have diversify. And I think once you've done that low ticket thing, it's just done and then it's out there and it can just grow,
Yeah.
have its
Yeah.
own growth journey. It's really interesting. Yeah.
Cool.
Uh,
Well, yeah, thank you so much, Venus. I want to acknowledge you for like you're always like super vulnerable and like very transparent and it's very inspiring your story. And I love how you're like so open to like, oh, I'll just, use LinkedIn more and just share through that. So I love how you're just so open to something that we just talked about like literally the same day. I think you posted a post. Um,
yeah.
so it just shows that like you have a growth mindset. And then I love how you're able to like reinvent yourself and like just continue to share your evolution with others and show that, hey, it is possible to be multifaceted and you don't have to like be just one thing, right? So it's just cool to see that you're very open about that journey and just sharing with others like, hey, this is how I'm currently doing it.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. I actually interviewed a woman who's got this book about how to be everything. She's a multi-potentialite. I would recommend
Mm.
reaching out to her. She's called Emily something. Oh, I can't remember her name now. Anyway, she has a book, she has a TED talk which has had millions of views. And
Ah,
it talks about these four models of multi-potentialite. And one is the group hug, which is what I am, which is like basically there is an umbrella. And there's all these different elements under this holistic self-love. Whereas another
mm.
model would be the Einstein
Oh,
model, because apparently Einstein had a full-time job and he was coming up with his theories. So that's like someone who
um,
has the full-time job, and then they have the side hustle.
hmm,
And then there's like the slash approach, which is kind of like people who are doing, let's say, part-time waitressing while they're trying to be an actress, that type of thing where it's 50-50. And another one which is the Phoenix, which is someone who does something for 2 years and they kind of die and then they reinvent a
ah,
new person, a new invention and what have you. So when
huh.
I discovered that, I felt really that it was okay to have all these different facets, because before I
Mm,
was a blogger, I was changing jobs every so often. One of my
mm,
aunties said to me in a family wedding, "You're always changing jobs." And I just thought, you've no idea how hard I'm working out. I didn't want
mm,
to change jobs. It was just circumstances like led me to different things.
mm,
That made me feel very unstable. But for now, I don't believe that I'm reinventing myself every time. I just feel like I'm adding.
mm,
So it's like adding to my expression and just new
hmm.
mediums. 'Cause in 15 years, I mean, social media has transformed. Instagram wasn't around, 15 years ago, and a lot of the platforms I'm using now didn't exist. Even podcasting wasn't really a thing 15 years ago.
Hmm.
Um,
True. Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. And the adding to the expression seems more accurate, I guess. Or yeah, it's whereas reinvention feels almost like I'm changing, right? Which is not
yeah.
always the case. It's like more of compound interest, it sounds like, or compound development.
Yeah, it's just continuation in different avenues, and I think that's what you can do as well. But I mean,
Mm,
I feel like you're a few steps ahead of me in terms of what I want, because I want to be hosting retreats. I want to be making 100
mm,
euro courses. I want to be doing, that's what I want to be
mm.
doing.
Okay. Yeah, so in some ways I think we can both help each other, right? Because I come from like the course selling world and more of the B2B training and the
Mm.
retreat world and stuff like that. Because like a lot of these companies will have like a lot of company retreats. So perhaps I can help you. And then I mean, just being around you, I think like I've gotten so much value. So I do think there could be, we could figure out what that looks like. But yeah, but at least now that we know, yeah, I would love to support you in that as well. Hopefully. Yeah.
Cool. Amazing. It sounds amazing. I really want to get into the retreat world. So I'm thinking more of, because I've got a book out coming out in September, if I told you. I've written a book called Orgasmic Manifestation. So it's bringing
Ooh.
orgasmic energy with law of attraction and
Oh.
non-sexual tools. So it's kind of like using vibrators as personal development tools. And it's a very powerful practice, which was spoken about in Think and Grow Rich. That is the chapter about the transmutation of sexual energy, or the mystery of sex transmutation. So
Yeah.
that's something that really has really inspired me, and that's a whole new facet of my work, which I don't always tell people about because I know that that's another taboo. Like the esoteric world is
Um,
another kind of like, oh, she lost her mind. So that's so I'm
mm,
bringing that with sexuality. But this is things that are concepts that come from Napoleon
mm,
Hill and many like Tantra Taoist
mm,
ideas of sexuality. So I'm really in that space
mm,
now about the non-sexual implication of sexual energy, which is something I
mm,
find really interesting. And I
mm.
want to start giving workshops about that. I've given a few already, but when the book will be out in September. So
Oh, cool. Okay.
mm.
Um, yeah, I feel like there's maybe a couple people I want to introduce you to. So one of my friends, her name is Tara. She's done like a lot of like industrial design stuff, so
Uh-huh.
like product design consulting, but she's
Oh,
also
cool.
like super into the self-development world as well. So
Oh, cool.
I think you both will hit it off. And yeah, she's kind of like in this transition stage where she's like, should I continue to do this like industrial design stuff? And she's like really brilliant, right? But then I think like a part of her like wants to just like be like an executive coach and like a business coach and like so she's like kind of like but yes, she's a good human being. Yeah, and she's like traveling the world and doing her thing. And she's so young too. So I'm like, man, I don't know how you're only like I think she's only like 22 or 23, but she's like just doing it, which is inspiring, which is inspiring. And then oh, I wanted to comment because one of the guys, like one of the copywriter guys, his name is Kevin Huck. He does copywriting for like on LinkedIn for like the psychedelics community,
Ah.
which as you know, that's like just as taboo, right? As
Mm.
what you're saying. So, and he said like, no, there's like a huge psychedelics community. So I just mentioned that to tell you that like I think there's a community on LinkedIn for sure for it. I mean I'm not as in that world, but I don't know if that'd be helpful if I could introduce you and you can kind of talk to him. But it seems like he's like has a lot of thoughts on how to like and then he'll like write your LinkedIn post for you. So if that's something that you want to like work with him on. But either way, like he's a good person as well.
It's interesting because, like, after I spoke to you, I was super inspired. I just opened a document and started writing down all these ideas for LinkedIn posts. So I think for me, I think that type of thing has to be done by me. It's very
Yeah,
personal.
sure.
So
Yeah,
because
very
for me,
personal.
if I'm using my voice as my tool, then I think
True.
maybe other things I can outsource. Like I'm going to be
Mm,
outsourcing my buying guides because I'm going to have a
mm,
template. So it's going to be quite clear and there'll be a
mm.
style. So I guess can't spend my time doing 2,000 word articles which are about products. So,
Yeah,
but I
true.
do find the LinkedIn really interesting. But I'm going to actually make a post about how I've not really shown up as myself because I feel like I
Um,
have to dial back a lot because I made a video recently and I spoke about tarot because I love tarot and I
uh,
do tarot reading. I just did a tarot oracle card every morning. I'm learning tarot. I just find it really interesting. And
mm,
someone said, like a long-term follower, you lost me at tarot. So so
mm,
sometimes when you show up as who you are, you're
mm,
welcoming some people, but others are kind of leaving when they
mm,
see that, oh, you like tarot, oh, you like this, oh, you like that.
mm,
So that's the problem sometimes, not knowing who my
mm,
audience is. I've not
mm,
done that kind of work on my personal brand, to try and think who am I speaking to? Because I've just been
mm.
focused on my own message. Because a lot of people are trying to give me branding tips. They talk
Uh,
about the personas and like how you should be
yeah,
focusing on things, and I think that feels very limiting. So what do you think
yeah.
about that?
I think that's why the universe connected us together because I think we're both in some ways like the anti-brand, like because
Mhm.
to your point, yeah, I've gotten and then people that are talking to me, I'm like, dude, you don't even post on social media. Like, why are you giving me advice?
Yeah.
Whereas like I'm pouring my heart out on all these platforms. And then so now I take it with a grain of salt. I'm like, dude, like if you're like with you, like I'll listen to what you say because like clearly you're doing it, right? But like 90% of people that are giving me like feedback, I'm like, I haven't seen you made a post ever. Like, why should I listen to you? So I don't know.
Maybe we should do a mastermind of the anti-brand.
Oh, yo, that dude, that'd be sick. That'd be awesome. I think that would actually like attract a lot of people because like so my fifth book that's coming out this year is like don't put me in a box.
Mm.
That's like the name of the book. So that's like a
That's
lot of
definitely,
ways.
yeah. My life
Yeah.
is, I just find it very restricting. What I've loved about being a content creator is that I don't feel restricted. So I feel like
Mm,
I'm the boss. I don't have to like ask someone if I can go into a certain
mm,
direction or expression. I could just, it's just me. And I've just created like my own products or even, just my
yeah.
YouTube videos or even just a lot of things I've just created myself, even like
Yeah.
meditations and
Mm.
yeah.
Cool.
Mm.
Well, this is inspiring. Yeah, I'm sure we'll have many more conversations because I do think like the anti-brand. I mean, like we'll probably have to talk to how we can package it, but even if we could just try a couple, we could do like a LinkedIn Live event about that.
Yeah.
And then that'll be good
That'd be really
funnel for
cool.
both of us in terms of like people that will reach out to want to know more and then can buy into like either courses or books or whatever. I think
That'd
that'd
be something I
be
would love to do when I've got my funnels in place. Because I would like to get
mm.
into a more of a mentorship role. Because I
Oh,
think mentorship, when I look at the definitions of mentorship and coaching, I see myself more as a mentor,
yeah, totally.
because I think coaching is a skill I think you need to kind of have some kind of learning or some kind of
Mm.
experience in. But whereas
Would you be
mentorship's like that with it. Mm.
would you be open to doing like corporate trainings and stuff like that? Like, let's say I work with like a tech company that's like pretty open, pretty progressive, like, and I'm like, hey, like, would you be open to having Venus come in and do a workshop on thinking outside the box, creativity? I feel like you can add a lot of value with that, and then I could just sell it as one of my offerings.
That'd be amazing because I'm always because I think one of my skills is like, for example, people make assumptions about how people react to what I do. And
Hmm.
people think, oh, I'm be judged, I'm going to be, maybe sometimes. But what happens more often than not is I inspire trust and people open up to me with secrets that they never told their partners or never told their
Mm.
friends, never told anyone. And I'm kind of like a box of secrets because people
Huh.
find me trustworthy. So I know that I have a lot of
Um,
um I know I can bring a good energy to the
hmm.
room in that sense.
Huh. Cool. Yeah, I definitely think there's definitely a lot of ways we can partner because as I'm selling these like corporate training packages, you could definitely help with a lot of that stuff. So as I'm like talking to people, I'll definitely keep you in the loop and we'll figure it
Mm,
out if I see any interesting opportunities, but at least I can keep in mind like, oh, like yeah, that would be cool.
cool. Sounds exciting.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. And you're okay with me posting this like all over social media and stuff
Oh
like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
right? Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Looking forward to, yeah. Let me know how it goes, and if there's anything I can help you, definitely feel free to reach out.
Yeah, any branding tips and trying to make help if you can help me get what you have as a business model. That's what I want. We can do a swap of knowledge. But
Mm,
I'm really looking at people like you and a lot of other guests that I've had on my podcast as an inspiration for my own business model. So
mm.
that's really cool.
Yeah, let's schedule another call. Do you want to? Should we do that? Like schedule that call now, or what do you think?
Oh yeah, that'd be amazing.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I feel bad that I'm like monopolizing your time, but it sounds like we're both getting
Yeah.
value from this, so it's all good. All right, let's just say like 2 weeks from today. So the 17th, is like the same time. Would that work?
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I can advertise it then if you tell me like in advance and like we make a LinkedIn live or what.
Oh yeah, do you want to do that? Okay.
Yeah, because that'd
That'd
be
be
cool to
cool.
get some
Yeah, 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 LinkedIn
traction.
Live. Yeah, so I'll put together the event and then yeah, so that'll be good. And then we can strive live stream it. Okay, cool.
Cool.
Let me do that.
Amazing.
So yeah, when I create the LinkedIn event, I'll send you the details. Oh, let's do so how I do the thumbnails for the YouTube is I take a
I
picture.
don't know. I look really red. I don't know if it's like the Zoom thing or what. I don't know what's going on here.
Oh, what do you mean?
Because I
That's
think that the zoom like look makes me look really red. Don't know.
oh, nah, you're fine.
I look super red.
Is it okay? So whenever you're ready, let me know.
Yeah.
One, two, three. Okay. And I can send you the picture. Let me see how it turned out. Oh,
Yeah, I really
cool.
need
Oh,
to.
that's nice. That's a nice picture. Okay, cool.
Is it on the chat or?
Oh, you want to see it first
Oh, it's
before
okay.
it's fine?
It's okay.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's fine. If you don't like it, you can always send me a picture that you want me to use and I can like change it. So,
Okay.
yeah. Okay, and then yeah, I'll link all of your social medias and your link tree and all that stuff on the episode as well.
Amazing. And also I want to get a shout out for my life upgrade meditation. Because I was thinking, one of my regrets, this is a piece of advice for anyone out there who has a personal brand. It's one
Mm.
of my regrets after 15 years of content creation is that I don't have an email list. I've just
Oh.
been starting it this last few months because I didn't know what could I have as a lead magnet because I've got all these
Mm.
interests. So I came up
Mm.
with the life upgrade meditation, which is 100 meditation affirmations that reflect the 12 areas of life from the
Mm.
life wheel. So that's my lead magnet if anyone
Cool.
wants to have that meditation. And
Okay.
yeah, and then they get on my mailing list once I have my new products.
Mm.
So products, then I can target them. Mm.
Yes, I saw your in the link tree, I saw your meditation, so I'll make sure I'll put that in its own separate in the description as well.
Cool. 'Cause I think everyone wants to upgrade their life, no matter what you think of
Yeah.
spiritual or personal
I
development. Or
mean, you're super inspiring. Like, I'm sure a lot of people will, yeah, definitely take advantage of that. So,
cool. I look forward to
awesome.
17th then.
Yeah, yeah, I'll send this out. Funny enough, I'm being interviewed on a podcast in 1 minute, so it's like, but I'll send it
Okay.
out when I have a chance. So,
Okay, cool.
yeah, thank you so much.
Well,
I'll see
thank
you
you so
around.
much. Okay, have a nice weekend.
Thanks, you too. Enjoy. Bye.
Bye.